And we're back. Dr. Jacques Petrie from Soho MD, here at the Bullpen at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. I'm here with Bob Molinari of Repoxygen. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so can you tell us your story and what got you here?
Sure. So I started life as kind of a science guy, a PhD in biophysical chemistry, and then I did something a little unusual. I went straight through and got an MBA after that.
Oh, wow.
And I always wanted to kind of have one foot in science and one foot in business. And that's what I've been doing for the last 35 years or so. So
That's amazing. So you didn't no postdoc, just straight from the PhD into the MBA
correct.
process. And what did you do after that?
So I came out here to the West Coast, and I was actually in a materials company for a while. And then I made a seminal change. I went to McKinsey and Company. And my PhD thesis actually had to do with some of the early days of work in DNA.
Wow.
And McKinsey, at the meantime, was getting all these questions about how that fledgling industry was going to play out. And I always joked that they needed somebody who knew how to spell DNA, and I did. So that's how I got started.
That's amazing. And so you worked there for
I worked there for about 3 or 4 years, and then literally there was so much demand for people who knew business and the science that right after that I became sort of a startup founding CEO for a biotech, in that case, in that era, DNA sequencing company.
Wow.
And have been doing that kind of ever since, probably 5 or 6 companies.
That's amazing. And so you did these multiple companies, and then what got you into Repoxygen?
So a failure at retirement, probably. So I had worked for 12 years in drug discovery, working on targeting fatty acids. We can get into that in a moment. In the brain, it's all about the fats.
Totally.
So when I was doing that, we eventually got into clinical trials and started getting a much bigger investor group together. And then I, not really being from big pharma, stepped aside. Thought I was going to retire. And then I was contacted by a Berkeley undergrad who had read all this work about different neurodegenerative diseases and new approaches, and he was kind of personally pissed off that nobody was really picking up on these things. And for the first many years of neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, it was all about aggregated proteins.
Absolutely.
Amyloid, tau,
yeah.
all those things.
Yep.
And we now know about 100 billion later, and maybe 10 years later, that they don't really work that well. A few drugs are approved, but again, it's not much of an effect. So these new approaches really looked interesting to me, and I was probably one of the few guys on the planet who actually believed in and understood this sort of fatty acid complicated metabolism.
That's amazing. And so could you tell us more about that?
Sure. So the approach really, so when you have one of these neurodegenerative or even retinal degenerative diseases, there's a whole host of things that go on. Not only do you have aggregated proteins, or what I call technically gunk, in your cells, you have synuclein, tau, amyloid,
yep.
drusen in the eye. Those are really just degraded proteins and fats that all sort of agglomerate and cross-link and become insoluble. Sure, they add to the burden of the disease, but they were far from the cause. If you want to look at the cause, you've got to go way back upstream and look at how, again, this very large milieu of fats in the brain is metabolized. And when these fatty acids metabolize, they often form neuroinflammatory things, damaging things. But there's one little corner of that actually creates neuroprotective things. And being biology, of course, there's an enzyme, and that enzyme converts the neuroprotective stuff into the neurodegenerative things. Why? Who knows? But that exists. And when you have all of these diseases, this Berkeley student found out that all of that bad enzyme class is just massively upregulated. The neuroprotective fats are downregulated. And simultaneously with that, neuroinflammation is up, protein aggregates are up, lipid peroxidation are up. Those are all bad things.
Wow.
And, maybe there's a different etiology of the disease you could think about, where you go back up to the beginning and say maybe it's this equilibrium of fats that's a problem.
That's amazing. So he was pursuing the enzymes involved with lipid metabolism. So a lot of the work was focusing on things that were more aqueous, and now he was looking more
Right.
at the lipid world.
And again, that chemistry tends to be a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, there's thousands of molecules involved, and there's only this one little corner that we got interested in. And sure enough, in academia, there had been a lot of work done on this for 25 years. But back to our earlier point, not much was funded other than amyloid and tau.
Wow.
And this work got done sort of in a vacuum with not a lot of funding. And but the data was stunning when you go back and review it all.
It was that clear that there was something going on.
It was. And they were writing academic papers about this, but by the time the industry moved on to new things beyond the aggregated proteins, the intellectual property got old, stale, and was not really viable to do investment in that area anymore. So what do? Here you have something that absolutely works,
Yeah.
but it's not investable.
Yeah.
So we looked at all of that, and luckily we found a group in Europe that was that realized this as well, and they went off and did computer modeling and AI and all the modern drug discovery techniques, and developed a whole new line of chemistry that acted on this same target.
Wow.
And then they got composition of matter intellectual property on it, and we sort of stepped in right at the time when we could get it all licensed exclusively.
That's amazing.
So,
and can you tell us about Repoxygen in terms of the focus of the company and what?
So
what
when
are
we
the
put
goals?
that together, when we realized all of that, literally last spring, we incorporated the company around myself as the founding CEO, the Berkeley student who kind of put us all together, and then there's two other people, Shrifal Mehta and Ving Lee. Ving is sort of the chemist who's done a lot of the work in this field, and was available to become our CSO.
Wow.
And we got a chief business officer who wrote books about how to do biotech development and creation of value, and that book is used as a textbook. So
Wow.
Shrifal Mehta joined as well. And we're still all doing sweat equity, but we're so excited by this that's fine.
Yeah.
And so the focus of the company is really on this neuro, and by the way, all the things apply for retinal degeneration. Our initial focus is actually on retinal disease, things like AMD, geographic atrophy, diabetic retinopathy. Why is that? Well, if you've ever looked at a neurology trial, it takes 3 years and hundreds of patients,
Wow.
costing hundreds of millions of dollars. In the eye, you can look at the dead cells. You can shine a light in the eye, and with optical OCT, it's called, you can actually see what's going on, and you can see the lesions, and you can see if they're getting better or worse. And that is objective. There's no placebo effect. The number of patients you need is smaller because the variability in the measurement is low compared to all these, mini mental scales and things like that are used in Alzheimer's.
Totally. So the cost of running a study and showing proof of concept is much lower.
Right. So the value added for us is to get this shown in human in this kind of degenerative disease. And then, we will obviously do the Alzheimer's and MS and other kinds of work. Initially, if we get that funded by non-dilutive funding, grants, and so forth, we'll do that work. But the focus of the company is to show the rapid proof of concept in human.
That's amazing. And in terms of what you're working on now for 2024, what excites you the most?
Getting the money. So it's been very, very difficult in neurology for a lot of good reasons to get things funded. Most of whatever has been new in neurology has failed, so there's that. But we think we really understand this etiology of the disease, and we've gone, in some ways, way upstream of what's been looked at. And we can, with one agent, simultaneously downregulate this bad enzyme, but in doing so, downregulate neuroinflammation broadly, downregulate the amyloids, the taus, the lipid peroxidation, all the other things that go bad. And the good thing is that's been demonstrated in the literature. We just had now a series of compounds that does it better.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It's a paradigm shift for the whole
Yes,
area. So
exactly.
It's amazing.
Well, it's a thought relocation, if you will. You have
Yeah.
to think differently about the disease.
Yeah, exactly, and how we approach it in terms of analyzing what's really happening in
Correct.
these diseases. And in terms of the bullpen, the community, what's your ask?
So as soon as I heard the idea of entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs create an enclave of high quality investors that can, all look together at things and sort of interact together. That really appealed to me. And, it's hard enough getting ghosted by VCs and other people, when you have to do this kind of fundraising, you have to realize you're going to get said no to probably a few hundred times before anybody comes close to saying yes. And this provides an enclave of people who are all going through the same thing, who might have access to investors. In fact, one of the funniest things and best things about today is I had two of my investors come and they got shanghaied by other people and didn't have time to talk to me. So now they're feeling really guilty, so they're going to talk to me one-on-one later this week.
Exactly.
So it creates a really positive enclave. I also am a yacht guy, so I love the Golden Gate Yacht Club. And when they said they had the whole venue here for the week, I said that's really going to attract enough people.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, it's been a great event for this week.
And then of course Christian, the founder, is like a force of nature.
Yeah,
so.
it's amazing what he's done, what he's achieved with the Bullpen.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you, Bob Molinari, Repoxygen. Thank you for being here. If you want more information, you can go to bullpen.ventures. The link and additional information will be there. Thank you for being here, and we'll be back.